political events of the day, or the state events of the day, and the fact that the state banquet is about to start at Buckingham Palace. We are going to devote our Monday night panel to the subject of Donald Trump's visit. The question I want to ask you, and ask for your questions, is this: what sort of relationship should the UK and the US have over the next few years? Now, you either take the view that Donald Trump is a temporary phenomenon and he will be gone at the first opportunity that Americans have to get rid of him, or you take the view that he's very likely to win the next presidential election. Have to say, I'm not quite sure which side of that argument I'm on at the moment. I think if you look at the way the American economy is going, and let's face it, most people vote according to their pockets, you'd have to say that he ought to stand a very good chance of being re-elected. And a lot of American people seem to disassociate Donald Trump's, shall we say, rather controversial sayings and tweets from what he's doing with the economy. And that, I guess, has got to be his best chance of winning. If that continues, and people think, well, I can't stand Donald Trump, but I don't really care. If the economy's going gangbusters, why should I care if he's sort of a maverick in the White House? Then, of course, we have Brexit coming into the equation. And Britain is keen to have a trade deal with the United States. I mean, why on earth wouldn't we want a proper free trade deal with the United States? 20% of our exports go to the United States. So if you can increase that, why wouldn't you want to do it? But then, of course, you get all of the people who think there might be dangers from that, vis-à-vis the health service, vis-à-vis food standards and all the rest of it. So I want to investigate that a little bit over the course of the next hour. We have 4 guests with us, but before we go to them, I want to talk to our reporter Lucy Hoff, who's outside Buckingham Palace. Not being let inside for the first course, Lucy, are you?
Well, I wish I was, Ian. We've just had a sneaky peek of the menu, which is that we're not allowed to reveal quite what's on that menu yet, but it does sound absolutely delicious. But there are incredible dramatic scenes here at Buckingham Palace. The sky is a clear pink, and we've just seen 2 helicopters, one of them carrying President Trump and his wife Melania into the grounds of Buckingham Palace ahead of tonight's state banquet. The full red carpet laid out for the US president this evening, a lavish state banquet, 170 guests. The whole process has been overseen by the Queen, and we know that this is the part of the trip that Donald Trump is most looking forward to. It will be all the pomp and pageantry that we know he loves. His wife Melania will be at his side, as well as his 4 eldest children. Ivanka has been out with her father today, but we are, you might be able to hear behind me, there are some noisy demonstrators opposite Buckingham Palace, as well as some Trump supporters. There have been some small-scale confrontations between those 2 groups over the course of the day. The president, of course, a controversial and divisive figure, as demonstrated by those tweets sent while circling the skies over London this morning just before 9 o'clock, aimed at the London Mayor Sadiq Khan, calling him nasty and a loser. The London Mayor's office has hit back at that, saying that those comments are beneath the office of the President of the United States. A notable absence this evening is the Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn. He's declined his invitation and instead is going to be addressing a mass demonstration in central London. But we'll be there on the guest list this evening. The Prime Minister Theresa May, the senior cabinet figures such as Michael Gove, Jeremy Hunt and Philip Hammond, they'll be taking their seats ahead of tonight's dinner. But as we speak, the Queen will be greeting President Trump as he arrives at Buckingham Palace. He arrived about 15 minutes ago. Those 2 helicopters making their way across the skies of central London. That dinner will be taking place inside the palace in the State Halls this evening.
Lucy, thank you very much. That's Lucy Hoff reporting from Buckingham Palace. A very hungry Lucy Hoff, I think. Right, let me introduce you to our Monday night panel. So Christopher Mayer joins us, good friend of the programme, former British ambassador to the US. Good to see you, Christopher. Zoe Gardner is from the Stop Trump campaign. Good to see you, Zoe. Ashok Kumar, lecturer at Birkbeck in International Political Economy. That's a very grand title, Ashok. Welcome.
Thanks, Ian.
And Erol Morkoc is from Republicans Overseas. Well, let's start with you, Erol. This, shall we say, has been quite a controversial state visit so far. It got off to a very controversial start with the President responding to some statements from the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan. He hasn't issued any more controversial tweets since then. But what do you think that Donald Trump is trying to achieve with this visit?
With Sadiq or with the entire visit?
Just with the entire visit.
Well, with the entire visit, Donald Trump has come with a clear and present message that nationalism does not equate to isolationism in the U.S., and the same can be true for Great Britain. There's a tumultuous time here, obviously, with Brexit, with turnover in Parliament, with the PM, with Nigel taking over Europe, and with the
taking over Europe. That's a thought.
And so with all that sort of unique situations, I think he's come over with a pretty direct message about rekindling and reinforcing the quote-unquote special relationship that we believe is a cornerstone of our two nations, and built on the bedrock of the 75th anniversary of D-Day.
Christopher, it's kind of awkward timing for Britain, isn't it, with a change of Prime Minister. What do you think the British government can achieve from this visit?
Not a lot. If I'd been planning all this, if I were God, I would not have had a visit by the President of the United States.
Which you once
were. Well, yes, true. I'm an ex-God now. So, can I be that?
Yes.
No. You're a God.
To us, you're always a God.
Oh, God, you smarmy devil. Should have been in the Foreign Office.
I think not.
What was I going to say? Well, yes, no, this could not. The timing could not be worse. Could not be worse, because we have a Prime Minister who's not simply a lame duck, she's actually a dead duck. And it's very hard to see intergovernmentally what the United States could achieve from this visit, and it's quite hard for us to see what the UK can get out of this visit, government to government.
Wouldn't it have been better to have cancelled it as soon as we knew that the Prime Minister was going?
You couldn't.
So there weren't discussions.
No, I don't think you could do that. I'll tell you why. Because there are two bookends to this visit. One is when Theresa May raced across the Atlantic just after Donald Trump had been inaugurated, and invited him to come over, or at least passed on to him an invitation from Her Majesty the Queen to pay a state visit. The other bookend is the 70th anniversary of D-Day landings in 1944, at which an American president must be present. Bill Clinton was there in 94, although it wasn't a state visit. He passed through London. It was obvious that Trump would come through on the 75th. So the date spoke for itself. What a brilliant week. State visit, D-Day commemoration, bingo, you've got a wonderful thing. Except what we didn't take account of and could not have foreseen was the dire state in which Brexit would leave our national politics.
Zoe Gardner from the Stop Trump campaign, clearly you would have liked the visit to have been called off for whatever reason. What does the campaign hope to achieve during the visit?
Well, I think what we can't do, obviously, is send him packing home. And many people have put it to me, well, you can't stop Trump. But what I think we can stop is the continued spread of what we call Trumpism. So we've seen
I like to
around...
call it Trumpery.
Trumpery, I like that even better. So this Trumpery around the world is less funny than its name would suggest. We've seen, far-right movements gaining power around the world or across Europe and in the UK, and we've seen the election just recently of President Modi in India off the back of a nakedly Islamophobic campaign. We've seen Trump supports Bolsonaro in Brazil, who's again...
With respect, in Modi's case, he preceded Donald Trump. I mean,
that's true, but
this
is what I'm saying. It's not just so much about the man himself. It's a global phenomenon that we're seeing, a rise of intolerance and the politics of hatred and division. So what we want to do with the protest is raise our voices loud in this country and say that we don't want to see any of that in the UK, and we want to be part of a movement of solidarity around the world of people who are standing up against that kind of politics all over the place. So we want to urge our politicians to move away from the kind of Islamophobic, homophobic, murderous immigration policies that Trump represents, and that we have seen also within our own politics. And we want to stand up for a world that celebrates diversity, that celebrates migration as an opportunity and a possibility for all, that protects the rights of women and minorities, sexual minorities, all different types. So that's what we want to achieve, really. The carnival atmosphere that we're hoping to create tomorrow is about celebrating the strength that we have in our diversity.
Ashok, when you look at this state visit and compare it with others, I mean, maybe it's difficult to compare it with others, certainly difficult to compare it to Obama or Reagan's state visit back in the 1980s. What do you think is likely to emerge from it, or do you think Christopher's right, nothing will?
Well, I think that actually what we see coming, what we can analyze is what's coming out of the Trump camp, and it's pretty explicit. And I think that, again, I want to kind of maybe to reiterate at a kind of analytical level what Zoe was saying, in the sense that Trump is sort of symptomatic of sort of the composition of the economy and how that reflects back on sort of political movements, whether they move to the right or to the left. And so what we see is a rightward shift in a lot of the world, but Trump coming here and trying to really take advantage of Britain's weak position and bargaining position.
How is he doing that, though?
So you can see this. They had an 18-point plan of what they want. And we keep seeing people say the special relationship. Actually, what you see, and if you look at it discursively, actually the number of the people who are saying special relationships are actually British politicians.
That's always been
not
the case,
really the U.S. Yeah, that might be the case, but it's more so now, because actually there's nothing favorable in the terms that they're asking for. They're actually harmonizing things downwards. They're saying they're gutting GMO protections, and basically we're going to be eating like plastic chicken. And then you also have the fact that they want to privatize, and this is on the table, privatize the NHS. They've been explicit about this. And they say that if you do have deals with rising powers like China, which if you're, thinking about the British economy, that would be a smart move. And you're talking about sovereignty. Trump's saying, if you do this, we won't even share intelligence secrets with you. So where's that special relationship? I mean, the special relationship is contingent. So it's not special. It's just there was, for quite a bit of time, common interest. And what we see is now explicitly coming out is this completely asymmetrical relationship where Britain doesn't really have that much bargaining power.
Christopher, I mean, when you compare this when you were ambassador in Washington, when there genuinely was a special relationship...
No, I banned it. I said I did not allow the term to be used inside the British Embassy. I thought it was a snare and a delusion which the Americans exploited to their own advantage.
So nothing has changed then, to coin a phrase?
Well, you see, the thing is, it's like a sort of endless campaign I wage, and I don't seem to get anywhere at all. I try and get people to expunge from their diplomatic vocabulary the phrase "a special relationship," and instead to concentrate on interests, where they converge, where they diverge, to invest deeper in the converging interests, and to be aware of where the interests diverge. Now, Ashok has just run off a list of things. I don't agree with all of them, but I mean, he's got a serious point there. Nowadays, I would say that if you're talking about hard interests where they should converge, you're talking intelligence, you're talking defense, and you're talking about a very wide-ranging economic relationship. You are not talking about integrating political ideologies, to your point. And incidentally, I think that Trump's most unwise interviews, firstly to the Sun and then to the Sunday Times in the last few days, in which he takes all kinds of sides in British politics, that's violating a most important norm of diplomacy.
Surely any normal president would have had a briefing with somebody from the sort of British desk in the White House, if there is such a thing, and warned of the pitfalls of these interviews. But if he did have those briefings, he just ignored them.
No, I think he ignored them, and I think what he said was deliberate. If you look at the pattern of Trumpian behaviour, both in politics and in business in New York City, he nurtures, he cherishes the capacity to disrupt and to be unpredictable, even if in the end he comes back to being...
And often it works. It sometimes doesn't work, but often it can work.
That's what I think he was at.
You look at North Korea, which I'm sure we can all have differing views on, but I mean, we can all agree maybe not enough came out of those talks, but the fact that he did what he did, I can't see another president having had those talks with Kim Jong-un, and whatever lack of detail emerged from them, surely it's better that they actually met around a table. And I always think people who meet are less likely to sort of point a gun at each other.
Yeah, but it didn't stop the First World War, did it?
No, it didn't, but we are 100 years on from that.
But there's no such thing as progress. I mean, let's be clear about it.
Well, that's very depressing. On that depressing note, we're going to go to a break. If you'd like to talk to our four panellists here, Erol Morkoc, Ashok Kumar, Zoe Gardner and Sir Christopher Mayer, the number to call 0345 6060 973. We can talk about the visit in detail if you want, but I also want to open it up to ask what sort of relationship should the UK and the US have post-Brexit. Let's pick up on some of the points that Ashok was making there as well. You're listening to LBC. It's 18 minutes past 8.
This is LBC.
It's not just our award-winning Peugeot van range. It's your dog grooming, lift engineering, espresso making, patio building, total and utter beating heart of